What's going on, CDL fans? Maverick here, and today we're going to be ranking all the CDL franchises throughout the first 3 years of the Call of Duty League. As you can see here are all the current and former teams that we've had so far in the COD League. Obviously, we have the 12 that we just saw play in this past season of Vanguard, as well as the 4 down here towards the bottom that are past teams that are no longer a part of the league. So obviously, we have OG LA, Chicago Huntsman, Optic Chicago, and Dallas Empire. Basically, all Optic teams other than the Empire, of course. So far through 3 years, we have actually had 16 franchises, which is pretty interesting. And obviously this number is not really going to change probably much going into future years unless we get expansion. But yeah, we're going to be ranking these obviously S through F tier, kind of based on how they perform through the first 3 years of the CDL. So first, let's kick it off with the teams that are no longer in the league, and then we'll work our way through the actual standings based on last year's performances in Vanguard. So kicking it off down here with Optic Chicago, obviously only 1 year. This was a team, well, actually, we had 2 years of this team, but only 1 year of the Optic Chicago brand. I'm going to put this in the B tier. I mean, overall, I think they were like a top 4 team, the entire year that they were in the league. Obviously, Formal, Envoy, Dashy, Scump, very fun roster. But unfortunately, they were kind of a middle. They weren't that good. I put them right in the middle of the pack here at B. Then for the Chicago Huntsmen, I'm going to put them in the A tier. I think this was a super fun team to watch, especially back when it was 5v5. It was interesting, seeing the likes of Arcades as well joining the members of the Optic Chicago roster. Obviously had that huge win over OGLA at COD Champs. Obviously, with the whole, remote playing and that whole experience of not being on LAN through these years, definitely is a little weird. But I thought it was really interesting to watch 5v5, especially because we got to see more pros on the main stage, at the pro level. So I thought that was cool. But of course, 4v4 reigns supreme in Call of Duty. But I'm going to put the Huntsman at A. Then we have OGLA. Now, obviously, this is, this was the Optic brand, but it wasn't, Hex's Optic, hashtag not my Optic. I'm going to put them in the F tier. Of course, I mean, they were just a complete mess. I mean, Dashy didn't even play for them, even though he was like a part of their team. Barely even played, putting them in the F tier. Then the last of the teams that are no longer part of the league, we have the Dallas Empire. I'm putting them in the S tier. I mean, obviously won the first ever COD League World Championship, as well as came in 3rd in the year following. And then obviously the whole merger with Optic had to see the brand get done in. They're no longer a thing, unfortunately. I really like the Empire brand. I mean, overall, I think it was an amazing, being the first team to win the World Championship after franchising, I think is a feat that, if the COD League has a long history, will be one that we remember. I mean, if you try to think back to who won, I don't know, the first NBA championship or something like that, like obviously that's great history that'll never be changed. So the Dallas Empire are in the S tier. So starting it off with our current teams that was in last place last year, we do have the Paris Legion. If we look at their tournament results, like you can see this on the screen, obviously mostly 9 through 12s, 11 through 12s, all the way through. This number 1 was a Warzone event, so that doesn't obviously count, but they got a 1 through 4 back in launch weekend 2020, a 3rd through 4th, and a 2nd in Modern Warfare. I mean, obviously this is just F tier. They're not even Paris anymore technically, so we will probably, if we redo this next year, we will have Paris and Vegas as 2 separate franchises, even though they're kind of the same franchise. I don't know, we'll see how that goes down next year, but literally pretty much never had a good placing for the most part. So Paris gonna be in the F tier. Then we have the Minnesota Rocker, obviously an up and down organization. I mean, they did have the greatest comeback in Call of Duty history against the Toronto Ultra. We all know about that one. So they won stage 5 of the Cold War season. I think they came in like 4th at champs that year. Overall, this team is just kind of like whatever, but I'm gonna put them in the C tier. I think they really are like your average COD franchise. I mean, they do have they have a win under their belt. Obviously a decent placing at champs, but overall it's been a very up and down ride for the Rockers so far through the first 3 years. I think similar story goes for the LA Gorillas as the Minnesota Rocker. I mean, they do have 1 win under their belt. Very up and down, ride for the LAG throughout these 3 years. I'm gonna put them in D tier though. I just think overall they haven't had as much success maybe as the Rocker as a whole. I mean, yes, they both have 1 win, but I think as a whole, of course, they both had that up and down, but the Rocker, I feel like, have had a little bit more consistent ups, and the LAG has had a little more consistent downs throughout the 3 years. I mean, definitely a team that hopefully next year we see them do a lot better, now bringing in Arcades. But I think, similar to Rocker, you can put them in the C tier, but I'm going to put them down just so I think the Rocker have had a little bit better success on a more consistent basis throughout the years. Then we have the Florida Mutineers. I'm not sure how many of you remember this, but I mean, obviously in recent years hasn't been very good. But if we come back to Modern Warfare, they actually had a bunch of weak wins when they were doing those weekly kind of like events. So they won in Dallas, they won in Minnesota, and they won in Paris. If you remember kind of those home stands that they did originally in Modern Warfare, obviously there's a couple seconds in there. Overall, pretty inconsistent team for the most part. So this team is probably, I'm gonna put them in the C tier because they did have those homestand wins. I mean, it was like 2 in a row, 3 in a row for them. So definitely pretty cool to see that of them back in the beginning. It looked like this franchise was going to actually be a force to be reckoned with, but obviously, as we all know in recent years, definitely hasn't been that. Next up, we have the New York Subliners, who have had an underwhelming franchise history so far. I mean, they won the Pro-Am last year. They won one of the homestands. I believe they won the New York homestand back in Modern Warfare. I mean, overall, this team has just kind of been not the greatest. I think they're kind of like a C tier. I mean, 1 to 2 wins under their belt, depending on how you look at the homestands. And overall, just sort of an underwhelming franchise based on the rosters we've seen them have with some of the greatest, like Clayster and Crimsticks. You know, they had the likes of zoomaa back in, you know, when the beginning of franchising, Attach, obviously Hydra, one of the best prospects so far. Definitely underwhelming for the Subliners. Then we have the Toronto Ultra, a team and a franchise that has so far pretty solid history that obviously I don't think many people would have really thought of, thinking at how their rosters have looked throughout the years. I mean, obviously, you know, they won a major back in Cold War. They won the Kickoff Classic back in last year in Vanguard, second place at Champs in Cold War. Overall, a pretty solid team. I'm gonna put them probably in the B tier, I think I have to say. Overall, a pretty good team, especially in the last 2 years. Cold War, obviously, they were great. I mean, they were a second place team almost all year long. I think they were a very good franchise in that year, and so far have had a solid foundation in their first 3 years to line themselves up for a pretty good history when we look back on the COD League years from now. Now we have the Boston Breach, the newest franchise to come to the CDL. I mean, overall, I think they have a couple like third, fourths. I mean, nothing too crazy. I'm gonna put them in the D tier. I mean, they just really haven't done anything, but they definitely haven't been as bad as like Paris. So I'm gonna put them in the D tier. There's not much to say for them. Now for the Seattle Surge, and we will look at their results for anyone who isn't necessarily been watching the COD League since its inception. Obviously, you can see here, I mean, they were pretty good towards the end of Vanguard and just throughout Vanguard. But if we come all the way back down throughout Cold War and Modern Warfare, I mean, pretty much everything you see here is that blue color, basically meaning they didn't come anywhere near top 4 finish, except for this one where they came in third, fourths in week 6. Overall, this roster has been pretty much garbage throughout the entirety of its history, except for the end of last year. So I think I'm gonna put them in the D tier just because no, actually I gotta put them in the F tier. Seattle's been pretty bad. I mean, obviously last year at Champs they performed pretty good, getting a 3rd place finish. But overall, I mean, Seattle just hasn't done anything, I really think, to earn themselves a higher spot on the list. Next up, we have the London Royal Ravens, another team that has had some ups and downs, definitely hasn't, you know, looked the greatest throughout the most of the CDL. Back in Modern Warfare, they did actually place 4th at Champs, which is, you know, pretty solid placing. But overall, definitely a team that hasn't really looked or done much. I think they probably go in the D tier, maybe even the F tier. I mean, they just haven't really done anything. I think I'll put them in the F tier just based on the same, you know, thing that I kind of looked at the Seattle Surge on. Definitely just haven't really done much. And overall, these franchises down here, I think are kind of, you know, I mean, these two are maybe in a different, you know, I'm going to move these up. These two are probably in a league of their own. And then you have these teams down here that haven't really done anything so far in their history. Next up, we have the LA Thieves, S tier team. I mean, obviously won the last Call of Duty Champs. I think if you win a COD Champs, you kind of put yourself in that S tier conversation. I mean, 3 years, 3 different COD Champs winners. I think the LA Thieves have been, you know, obviously Nadeshot owning them, a great franchise, have put on some for good years. In Cold War, they were pretty trash. But I think overall, S tier based on just their performances last year. Optic, I'm gonna put them in the A tier. I mean, if it matters, I'll put them above the Huntsman because they did win an event last year. I mean, Huntsman, I guess, did also win like some events or homestands or whatever the case may be back in Modern Warfare. But Optic, probably just A tier just because of who Optic is. I mean, winning an event, kind of being a decent team most of the year. Nothing too much to say about Optic in terms of actual success, you know, on the stage, but just their presence and their branding, I think just merits them to be an A tier team. And then Atlanta FaZe, of course, the best team, the best franchise we have seen so far in the Call of Duty League. I mean, S tier without a doubt. Obviously won a COD champs, 2 second places in Modern Warfare and in Vanguard. Pretty much, they haven't missed the finals. You know, they've been great. So I think overall, you know, Atlanta FaZe definitely regarded as the best franchise that we've seen so far in the COD League. But yeah, this is kind of our little makeshift tier list of the you know, all the Call of Duty franchises so far throughout the first 3 years. Let me know what you think. What franchise do you think is the best? I think if you kind of don't pick Atlanta FaZe, you're trolling. I think they definitely are the best. But let me know what you think. Would you really switch any of these up? Would any of these really make a big jump or a big fall on your list? Let me know down below in the comments. If you did enjoy, drop a like, subscribe for more CDL and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 content. And with that being said, hopefully I will see you all in the next video.